Good morning, world changers. Welcome again to day 5 with myself, Suzy Beaumont, and Rabbi Steve Leader, author of The Beauty of What Remains. Steve, we've been talking all week about your book. There's, incredible sort of insights that you've given us. But today I want to talk about legacy. We touched on it briefly yesterday. I want to talk about the eulogies that you write, the legacy of a person's life. The first thing I'm really curious about is you had to write the eulogy for your dad. And I was curious to know, was that the easiest or the hardest eulogy you've ever written?
Both.
I had a sneaky suspicion you were going to say that.
It was easy in the sense that he had Alzheimer's for 10 years and I had 10 years to gather ideas and to think about it. And it was difficult because I knew him as well as any other human being I've ever known. So this is the interesting thing that I think most people would not realize from the outside, Suzy. It's actually easier to write a eulogy about someone I don't know than someone I do know. Because when it's someone I don't know, my job is to artfully and sensitively present the family's perceptions of this person.
It's certainly the more nicer memories, the fonder memories.
Even the bad memories.
Yeah.
My job is to beautifully represent the family's perceptions, having no idea how accurate or inaccurate they may be. Because I sit with families for a couple hours a few days before the funeral, and we talk, and I have a lot of questions I ask, and it helps them. It's very therapeutic for them, and it helps me put together the eulogy. When I know the person well, it's not only the family's perceptions, but my own, and I know whether I'm getting it right or not. And it's much more difficult when you have the added self-expectation of getting it exactly right. For me to describe someone else's father that I didn't know relies only on someone else's views. For me to describe a father that no one knew the way I did, it's much more difficult.
And you have the pressure from your siblings and your mom as well, and just you know.
And none of them wanted to step up and do it.
No. Well, how could they compete with somebody that does it for a living?
And you know what? It was one of the greatest honors of my life because I didn't want anyone else to tell that story. I'll tell you something interesting. The young rabbi of my parents' synagogue in Minneapolis was upset with something I wrote in my book, because I wrote in the book that the young rabbi could never get my father's eulogy right. And he took that as an insult, that somehow he had done a bad job, which is, frankly, I think, quite immature. But I didn't say that to him. I just said, I didn't mean it that way, and I'm sorry. I see how you could feel that way, and I apologize. What I was saying was that he didn't know my father. He couldn't get it right.
And you know what? I completely relate to this, because I remember when we had my mom's funeral, we'd relayed all these stories we had a humanist funeral, and the minister, she was lovely, but she was delivering the stories, and I was just like, I remember just sitting there going,
not quite.
I kind of had my producer head on. I also had and I was just like, no, you didn't deliver the punchline right there.
Right.
Just missed the timing on that. And I was like, and I didn't have the courage to stand up there. I knew I couldn't have held it together, and it was important that these stories were delivered and her memories. But I wonder, you had to hold it together. You had to deliver these stories.
I sort of held it together and sort of didn't. I cried during my father's eulogy. I cry sometimes during friends. I'm burying friends. You know, I'm 61. My friends are dying.
Yeah.
My friends' parents are dying, whom I've known for 30 years.
Mm.
And on rare occasion, my friend's children or spouse dies. And I cry sometimes. I'm a real person up there. I don't completely lose it, or I'm no good to anyone. But I don't really, how can I put it? I don't try not to cry, you know. I just try to be human and real and as controlled as I can be. Um, I think actually what people appreciate about the way I go about the whole process, the intake, what I call an intake process, and then crafting the eulogy. I think a lot of people have the opposite feeling of the one you had at your mom's funeral. I think a lot of people say, oh, "You got it so right.
Yeah.
Thank
That's because
thank
I'm a
you."
control freak, though.
Yeah, but and sometimes people don't feel that way, I'm sure, but I do get a lot of, oh, that was, you got it. That was her.
Yeah.
How did you do that? And my honest answer is I listened carefully. It's also just a little professional insight into the rabbinate and probably every clergy. You have to ask the right questions if you
Yeah.
want to paint a proper portrait. You have to ask. You cannot just sit down and say, "Tell me about your mom." You know, that doesn't get you anywhere.
Mm. And this is what you said sort of in day one about asking those conversations, reliving the memories. Tell me about a time where you laughed so much. Tell me about how you met mom. Tell me how you met dad.
Yes.
Those kind of stories. And it is that gathering information. I mean, the purpose of a eulogy is obviously to celebrate the families, for the family, their loved one that has passed on, to share those memories for everybody that didn't know these things. And it's sad that, I think I said this to you the other day, that lots of things about when my dad passed away, I didn't know until after the funeral. I mean, should we make more of a conscious effort to have these conversations, to learn about our loved ones? Or is that the beauty in what remains, when we can discover these things after a loved one has passed away?
I like to rediscover things about my father that I already knew. That
Mm.
brings me great pleasure. And I do also take great pleasure in hearing a story. I was just with a cousin, a second cousin. I gave a talk in Denver, I think 3 weeks ago, and a second cousin lives there who I hadn't seen in, 40 years.
Mm.
And he told me a story about a time my father took him to breakfast when he was a teenager to kind of listen to his teenage angst and help him out. And it was beautiful to hear. So I think it's both. I like to rediscover my father again and again through memory, and I do like to hear new things about him through the memories of others. So I think they're both gratifying. What they both teach us, I think, is that our lives really are our story.
Mm.
Muriel Rukeyser, I put this poem in the book, or a line from it. The world is not made up of atoms, it's made up of stories.
Yeah.
Our lives are really not about our corporeal being, they're about our story.
And that's the deeper meaning of a eulogy. It's like, what
Yes.
is the story you are creating? What's the story you
Yes.
want to be read out?
When
When
I teach at the rabbinical seminary, I spend a lot of time with the young want to be clergy, talking about the difference between an obituary and a eulogy. And to make a long story short, I tell them that an obituary are the facts of a person's life.
Yeah.
A eulogy is the truths of a person's life. And there's a big difference.
Yeah.
If I were to say Suzy was born here on this day at this time and she had 3 sisters and a this and a that, I've learned nothing.
Mm. Yeah.
Nothing.
You're just reading a very
Those are the
vague
facts.
bio, yeah.
But this is a case where the facts reveal nothing. It's the truth that we're looking for in a eulogy.
Really reveals the character of a person, doesn't it?
The truth of the person's life,
Mm-hmm.
not the facts.
And this is, you mentioned yesterday about ethical wills. So let's talk about that, what we're trying to achieve with an ethical will. And if I'd love you to read out your own ethical
Sure.
will that you've left
Yes.
for your son and daughter, Hannah and Aaron.
So we talked about the importance of words, and this sort of parallel document to our estate plan or our material will. And Jews since the Middle Ages, it originally started as letters from fathers to sons, but then, of course, grew to include women as well, both as mothers and daughters. Since the Middle Ages, in Italy, Germany, and France, Jews have created this parallel document to their estate plan or material will called an ethical will. Some people call it a legacy letter. And it is a statement, a letter of instruction to our loved ones for when we're gone, an expression of our love for them, our advice to them, our hopes and blessings for them, sometimes our apologies to them. And they're mostly quite moving and quite beautiful. And, it sounds cliche to say you really never know. But it's true. I was at a dinner Saturday night with just a fantastic person who's a friend of mine. Her name is Amanda Klutz. And she's sort of a talk show celebrity in America, and an amazing dancer and Broadway performer. Her husband, Nick Cordero, died of COVID-19 at the very beginning of the pandemic in the United States. He was only 45 years old, I think, and left behind, their 6-month-old baby.
Oh, gosh.
And Amanda and I did a fundraiser together for a children's grief center in Los Angeles called Our House. And we started talking, we were interviewed in front of all these people at this dinner. And I was asked about the next book, which is about ethical wills. And I turned to Amanda and said, don't you wish that Nick had left one for Elvis? Their little boy's name is Elvis, who's now 2.5.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm sure Nick thought, I'm a young father, I'm healthy. Why would I write an ethical will? In my case, I had no idea my last conversation with my father was my last conversation with my father.
Yeah.
I had no idea that he would be able to talk and respond one day, and then the next day be virtually silent for the rest of his life. I had no idea. And I wish I had. I have in my heart and my mind his legacy. But I wish I actually had an ethical will from him. I did not want to let that happen to my children. So I wrote one when I was 40 and one when I was 60. I changed it because we changed, of course.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions, when should we write them and should we keep updating them? Because, the idea of me writing one in my 20s or 30s would be so different to where I'm at right now.
I would say it's the same answer to the question about your estate plan. Every few years, you should revisit it and update it.
Yeah.
Because circumstances change, the world changes, the people you love change in their age. I can say things to my children who are now 29 and 32, I couldn't say to them, when they were 9 and 12, So I think it's something that should remain a work in progress. However, it should also be a fixed document that you have a copy of, that ours is bound with our estate plan. So our kids, they can't get to the money part until they read this part first.
Exactly. One thing that it can do, because obviously it's about really focusing the mind about what message you want to convey, what you've learned, passing on knowledge, wisdom, experience, and what your hopes and dreams are for the people left behind. But I know certainly in this coaching group, I've heard some of my members saying, oh, I don't have any value to add. I don't have anything to offer, which I find crushing. So it creates a pressure. But I mean, I suppose in the pressure is an opportunity to kind of go, okay, well, if I feel I don't have anything to offer right now, what do I want to offer and what steps?
Okay, so a lot of people feel this way, which is why I've written the next book that I've written, because
right,
it contains
back for that as well.
Well, it contains 12 questions to ask oneself in order to have the material to create an ethical will. So there are 12 chapters. Each is about a question, which I write an essay about. Then I invited other people to write about the answers to those questions, their answers. And then at the end, I invite the reader to answer that question. I promise you that whoever is saying that in your group, if they took the time to answer each of these 12 questions, which we all can do, they will have everything they need to bestow an ethical will upon their loved ones.
Well, I think we just have to get you back when that book is released.
That's fine. But you know, Suzy, I'll make a subtle psychological point. A lot of people say that because they don't want to face their own mortality.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it really does focus the mind and saying to realize maybe I'm wasting life here. I'm not making the most of it all.
It is an opportunity to see, am I living in alignment with what I profess are my beliefs?
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes decision making very clear, because if you're not living in alignment with your values, then there's an opportunity there to take it back. So I'm conscious you do have to go, but if we could just finish off with you reading your ethical will that you've left behind for Hannah and Aaron, and
sure.
We'll finish there.
I'm going to turn the light up a little bit, so I think the quality of the picture will suffer a bit, but I'll be able to read. Okay. So this is my ethical will to my children. This is never easy for me to read. Dear Aaron and Hannah, the finest moments of my life have been with you and Mommy, sitting around our kitchen table laughing. I never feel richer or more at peace with the world than in those moments. That kind of love is more important than anything. Spend your life with a person as good as Mommy, and you will have many of those moments. And don't worry, you will know in your heart when that person arrives. It is a powerful, healing, beautiful kind of love. Grasp it. Have a healthy relationship with work. Do your best at it, but your work is not the same thing as your life. I often confuse the two and hope you will less so. Spend time in nature. It will remind you of God, of true greatness. It will calm you, cause you to pause, breathe, stand still, listen. It will help you feel humble and small in profound and important ways. Think of me when you are out there. Feel and know that my soul is with you. Do not roll your eyes at religion. Celebrate what makes you different. There is much to learn, much from our ancestors, from prayer, the Sabbath, candles, warm bread and wine, generosity and faith while gathered around a table with people you love. When you worry, remember that most things turn out better than we expect. When anxiety, sorrow, loss, and pain come, lean on the people you love. Do not suffer alone. It is much worse that way. This is another reason you should look for someone like Mommy to love. I would not have been able to breathe without her. I used to love to dance, but when I became a more public person, I stopped dancing at weddings and parties. I allowed my fear of what others might think of me, fear of being a spectacle, to keep me from dancing. I regret that now. It was a bad example to you and robbed me of joy. Don't let fear of what others might think keep you from dancing or singing or loving. Let nothing and no one suppress what your soul longs for. Live so that you do not die with a longing soul. Count your blessings. When you are feeling less than or want more or are mired in self-pity, which happens to us all, look around and count your blessings again and again and again until you tally 100 of them. Everything is easier when you are grateful. Feel for others. People behave badly because they are damaged. Let your first impulse be one of empathy. That being said, there will be a handful of people in your life who demand too much, who are mean, narcissistic, negative, causing you to feel terrible about yourself. Cut these people out of your life. You cannot fix them. Be good, and the rest works out. See the world with the people you love. Cherish time. It matters so much more than things. Mine with you and Mommy has made my life worth living. I wish for you that kind of love now. I wish for you that kind of love when I am gone. Say the mourner's prayer and light a candle for me when I am gone. Feel its warmth and know I love you still. Dad.
It's beautiful, and I hope you've started dancing.
Post-COVID, I shall.
I want to see you dancing, Steve. Nothing else. I'm sure. Absolutely beautiful legacy to leave behind, and yeah, but keep dancing.
All right. I will. Thank you, Suzy. It's wonderful to be with you as always.
Absolute
I appreciate
pleasure.
you.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.